Hello, my fellow rascals, pinkos, long hairs, etc., etc. Welcome to the podcast, Parrhesia to Power. This is the premiere. This is the very first episode, the pilot of Parrhesia to Power. Now, Parrhesia is effectively, it's basically just a Greek concept, or at least it originated in Greece, where it revolved around cordially speaking truth to, or just cordially exercising your right to speak boldly to authoritative individuals, to authoritative bodies, and many other different forms of authority. Now, of course, it revolved around doing it respectfully and doing it cordially, of course. Now, we might sway from that a little bit here or there, of course, but aside from that, that is what the general concept is. Now, before we get into what we will be discussing for our very first episode, I must introduce Isaiah Link, who will introduce us and what our genuine stances are on certain issues.
So, in this podcast, we have Sir Lawrence Spyrek, who has a book coming out. He's a libertarian socialist, which may sound like a oxymoron, but would you want to explain that in like a 5-second summary, why you believe what you believe?
Oh, a 5-second summary, my
just
friend.
Quick as possible.
All right, so libertarian socialism is a school of thought that revolves around It effectively revolves around, rather than state ownership means of production, it's just simply decentralized worker ownership means of production. Even though it sounds oxymoronic, note that the state is decentralized in this case. Generally speaking, it opts for a more direct democracy through a ranked voting system, or at least that's what my personal ideal would be. And generally just more, it's a system that opts for unfettered personal freedom, essentially.
You're also a transhumanist, but we'll get that into another episode. That's way too complex. Me personally, I'm kind of all over the place. I usually kind of don't have a big giant stance, but I am always pro-people. I'm usually anti-corporation.
So you're on the left.
Me personally, I'm very left-leaning almost most of the time, but that's kind of all I can say in that quick little gist of what I believe.
I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, there are left-leaning, many people lean left on issues, many people lean right on issues, but then again, I think it does us no good to think that people are just solely on the extremes, you know, for instance.
Well, I mean, I would consider myself a leftist or SJW in many situations, especially socially, which is what I care about more. I don't really care about,
Economics.
Yeah. I don't really care too much for economics, but I do at the same time because I have to. That makes sense, because if you don't care about economics, it's harder because you have to understand.
Certainly. And you see, I'm an ardent believer in the bell curve. You see, people aren't just on one side or the other. The bell curve the normal distribution model in statistics, it kind of states that, well, especially when it comes to people and their political stances, it is practically impossible to be on one extreme or the other. Statistically impossible at least. For instance, many socialists will agree that trade based on currency is A-OK, and many capitalists will believe that a reliable welfare state and a safety net is A-OK.
Many communists are pro-Second Amendment so they can have an uprising against the government.
Of course. Now, of course, we're not going to be talking about that today. Instead, we're going to be talking about the general concept of laying the foundation for what this podcast is going to be about. So to start off, simply speaking, truth to power is enough to rally fellow men and women against, well, at least what I would consider to be the oppressive ruling classes of the modern world. Although, despite power already knowing the truth, as my personal idol and hero Noam Chomsky eloquently put it. But what surprises me more so is that arguably the industries that are supposed to be speaking truth to power, the mainstream media and journalism, especially in the States where I'm from, they choose to support the oppressive status quo that is life under an exploitative capitalist oligarchy. And it's interesting to see how they try to defend it. I mean, now, of course, there's always the possibility that they could be funded by said capitalist oligarchs, as many of them are, as media consolidation is much more powerful than ever. Now, but of course, I digress. Now, speaking truth to power, generally speaking, is calmly without, I guess, devolving into an emotional idiot is certainly a good thing. there is nothing wrong with getting passionate about what you are saying, but make sure that you control your passion in a way that is productive. For instance, when I found out that just 100 companies are contributing 71%, over 70% of carbon emissions, CO2 emissions, basically, I guess you could say, deteriorating the quality of our atmosphere and thus our environment. And I figured that, you know what, me going vegan, that's a big step. And it is on an individual basis, but then I realized that even if half of America's working people were to go on an exclusively plant-based diet and use nothing but alternative and renewable energy resources, that wouldn't do a whole lot because of those 100 companies, most of them fossil fuel burning. So yeah.
This is when some people would say, well, what we need to do is as people take a stance, but me personally, I don't think people can change too much of that without getting government intervention. I know you're a socialist libertarian, so what are your views on that? Do you think the government should intervene? Because I believe the government would have to intervene, because I'm more of a nihilistic view. I don't think people have the ability and
the appeal to futility. So, pardon me, I am
that's
dying
kind of a contradiction
of
in my belief, but because I do believe people have power and we could overthrow the government if we wanted to, but at the same time, I don't think people would stand up for this.
Well, as a libertarian socialist, I view that I prefer that there are no unjust hierarchies. Now, I guess this is where I go into the anarchistic stance. Not that I want just pure chaos and nothing but chaos, but what I would prefer is that any hierarchy that is not able to be justified by any means, and any hierarchy that could be dismantled without producing tremendous harm to the people in it, I think that that is the ideal solution. And I do think that people have the power to do such a thing. Because yes, government intervention is a good way of reforming, is a good way of evolving the current society, but you can't, when it comes to capitalism in general, boy, capitalism, here we go. About to burn some bridges here, boys. When it comes to capitalism in general, it really, at its core, it cannot be reformed because it revolves around the exploitation of the working class and ultimately the theft of their labor value. Now, this is where I guess you could say that, well, if you can't evolve such a system, then how would you go about changing it? Well, just dismantle the whole goddamn system to begin with.
Burn it all down.
smashing the state one window at a time. Of course. Now, of course, that's the third time I said of course in 5 seconds. Never mind that. So,
see, that's the difference between you and I. I'm much more prone to order. And
well, I mean, it's possible to have order without a hierarchy or without a centralized government figure.
I agree, but you talk about chaos, and I always view chaos as a negative thing.
Oh, boy.
And, of course, we can get into that, but I don't think that's what we're here for. We'll talk about that some other time, maybe, right? But my biggest problem with basically any system, because they're all corrupt, honestly, because it's either a corrupt government or corrupt corporate system, it feels like.
Well, I feel like you have to distinguish between a political ideal and a political system's consistent failure in every human society solely because of that lovely thing that we call human nature. Now, of course, yes.
I just want to talk about my main issue. It's going to be kind of obvious. So Amazon reported $232.9 billion in revenue. And in order to end world hunger, it would cost $30 billion a year. So essentially what my problem is with a lot of companies, and this is just one company, imagine if many companies work together to get rid of world hunger. It's actually possible. People act as if world hunger can never be ended, but with companies, that corporations can actually essentially end hunger if they were wanting to, but they won't because that would not be in their best interest anyways.
Certainly, it would not be in their best interest because when you take the capitalist who decides to help the poor of the starving world and the capitalist who decides to sell food and to the wealthy, the capitalist who decides to sell food to the wealthy is going to be the capitalist who succeeds in the end because they will ultimately be making more income and more profit than the former capitalist who is trying to be beneficial or benevolent. Now, as you said, it's not in their best interest. And many issues we see now, such as I guess housing problems in the United States, for instance. In the United States alone, the number of houses without residents quintuples the number of homeless people. And this isn't because these homeless people are what you would call lazy bums. It more or less has to do with the fact that that capitalists are hoarding these empty houses as investment capital. It's why housing prices go up.
Many.
And it's, yeah.
Well, I want to talk about what you just said recently. You said homeless people aren't lazy bums, and I'd like to talk about that for a little bit, because just saying that, people don't believe you. You have to actually convince them that's actually factually true. A lot of these people take for granted genetics, culture, and a variety of variables in this long equation we can get into. So you are born with, if you're watching this podcast, you're probably born with a higher IQ. You probably have 2 arms, 2 legs. You probably lived in you're probably in a middle class family. All these things you take for granted because you live in it every day. Most people do not have these things in the world. Most people aren't middle class.
Exactly.
And people always say, well, immigrants come over here and make bank. Immigrants from Asia, I'm not going to talk about Mexico. Immigrants from like Asia are rich when they come over.
Well, it's not only that, but also in poorer countries. If you're immigrating from Canada or from Europe into the United States, the number of background checks and the number of, I guess, I don't want to call them investigations, but that's what they are. You have to go through are drastically more relaxed than those when you come from Asia or any other developing or poorer nation. For instance, if you were coming from Vietnam as an immigrant, they would have to make sure that you had a house in Vietnam. They would have to know that you had at least $5,000 in the bank. And those 2 things alone are pretty are hallmarks of considerably wealthier people. And the fact of the matter that those are required for people from poorer nations, but not people from wealthier nations, I guess it says something. I don't want to try and elaborate on what it says, but it it just, it's actually kind of fascinating how that works.
Yeah. Anything else you want to get into real quick, or continue on this conversation?
I would like to revolve back to the media, because this is where the conversation started for the most part. So the media likes to uphold this narrative of the American dream. If you work hard enough, you can make it hard enough. And if that were true, then construction workers would be billionaires, but they're not. Instead, the people who command them, the people who steal their labor value, dare I say, are the billionaires and the millionaires.
And think about this. The architects who imagine all these buildings aren't, you'd think these people would be the rich ones, or the people who build it.
No, it's the contractors.
Yeah. And you know what? And my uncle's a contractor, and he says he has one of the easiest possible jobs. It's not what you think of. I don't know. It just kind of, I don't know. It just, sometimes it's frustrating when you see the richest people and you're like, so what do they do? And of course there is a skill to that too, because if no one's working, then you're screwed. But in general,
yeah, dude, you really gotta. But if you're rich, you just really gotta push out of that mother's vagina, man. You just really gotta exit out of there, man. You really gotta be born into the right.
You're gonna make as
family.
Much. What people need to understand is you're gonna make as much as your parents do. That is just the most statistically likely thing in your life. And because of that, a lot of the things in your life, if you think about it a lot, it's not even a lot. If you just think about it, it's not all up to you. You don't get to choose how much your parents make. You don't get to choose your culture. You don't get to choose if you have a single mom, so you have to sell drugs so you don't get evicted from your household.
As much as you would like it to be otherwise, life is very deterministic by nature. Unfortunately, there are just so many factors that are not in your control, and because of those factors that are not in your control, your life is ultimately, it's not fatalist, it's more determinist.
Personally, I don't believe, and I believe in some level of free will. Like, if I choose to throw this headset, I could say, yeah, but I don't believe in full libertarian or full free will that some Christians claim. By the way, the Bible doesn't believe in free will. God, there's many verses, and you can talk about in the comment section. God hardening Pharaoh's heart, for example.
Oh boy.
Or environmental factors. You don't get...
All before the development of film cameras, surprisingly enough. But other than that, I mean, like I was saying, the mainstream media and many journalists uphold this narrative of the American dream, like I was saying, that if you work hard enough...
It exists.
It doesn't. That if you work hard enough, that you will eventually prosper. Now, of course, there was a construction worker's example, but if there are so many factors that are outside of your control, some of them perhaps even being internal or things that you were just born with. For instance, maybe it was a mental disorder, or maybe it was a birth defect that's incurable. You just can't control those things. I mean, you ultimately, by nature, you just can't. It's not that you won't. It's not that you shouldn't. It's not that you. It's just that you can't.
And let's just talk about the worst thing that come out of media, and that is YouTube politics.
Oh boy.
That's one of the worst things that come out of YouTube. YouTube reactionaries, the conservatives who are like SJWs, and then the SJWs, which I can kind of call myself sometimes. But what I mean by that is when I say SJW, I don't mean someone with very leftist meanings. I mean with someone who just gets angry over everything, which I'm not, because I joke pretty bad jokes every now and then.
Oh boy.
But what I'm saying is YouTube has caused a very toxic environment in the world of politics, and so has the media in general, because that's what like a lot of this discussion is, right? So what's one way we can diminish that, or is that even possible? Like, is it it's like too late to...
So YouTube used to be a very kind of meritocratic or democratic platform before, I mean, advertising started to get their hands all over it. Corporation. But for instance, you have some YouTubers who are making more money now, or no, less money now when they were with 700,000 subscribers than they were with 100,000. And that's very telling to show that just that when you have that middleman involved, that good old middleman with the the advertising, just how much revenue they can steal from the labor, if you will. And yeah.
And do you believe some of these people should be deplatformed, like Alex Jones, and people with genuinely dangerous ideas like Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro?
You can't really deplatform them. Like I wouldn't consider deleting their platforms from the internet. But what I would consider is to all of the people who attempt to host debates with them, all of the colleges, just generally, you're giving them a platform even though you don't want to. I mean, and this happens, sorry, I went off topic for a little bit. It's
okay, it's a podcast, man.
It's a
you gotta
podcast.
talk about whatever you want.
Oh yeah,
it's our podcast. I don't care about the topic.
It's our podcast. Okay,
Communism.
All right, but I would heavily recommend that if you already have a large platform, you should not invite them on your show if they have the dangerous ideas, if they are part of the reactionary right, so to speak.
But in a sense, shouldn't we challenge these people? And if we know they're stupid, I'm not even stupid, because I'll admit, Ben Shapiro is a genuinely intelligent guy.
But he's very dishonest.
Jordan Peterson is genuinely intelligent. I believe that. You may not, but I believe he's genuinely intelligent. I just believe he has some black ideas. Should we not debate and discuss with them, even though we believe they're totally wrong?
Well, and no, you certainly can. I mean, yes, definitely. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you certainly can. But the problem with that is if you have a platform that reaches out to thousands of people, there's this saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And goes, what? I mean,
that.
What?
Just keep going.
All right, okay. Okay, you want to throw down? Okay, no, I'm joking. But the fact of the matter at hand is, because there's no such thing as bad publicity when it comes to your ideas, people are going to try to use that as a marketplace. I mean, look at what happened to the Dave Rubin show, for instance. People just come on there to effectively, it's basically a free advertisement, however long, like 1 to 2 hours.
Because it's kind of like Larry David, too. So, I mean, not Larry David, Larry King, right?
Yeah, but Larry King genuinely challenged the people who were on his show when they said something that
I
was
honestly don't have a
fallacious.
problem. I don't have a problem with David Rubin because I know that his platform is literally just to talk, to give other people platforms. That's what his platform does.
That's what his platform
His platform is to give other people platforms, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that, even though I disagree with 90% of the guests that go on there because they're almost all like people like
Reactionary, right.
Candace Owens. Oh, MAGA, and I'm black, so haha, I can't be racist. When
Oh, boy.
black people can be racist, guys.
I mean, the fact of the matter at hand is that if you have a wide platform, I mean, it's okay if you have a smaller platform and people aren't really going to notice it and you're not going to reach
If
as
we have
much
Dave
people.
Rubin on, no one's going to care. Or if we have like anybody, and I'm not going to say Dave Rubin because he's not really dangerous. Something dangerous like Alex Jones. Like it's not going to, who's the only people who are going to go on that podcast are
No.
Alex Jones fans.
Oh boy, yeah. But like I said, just do not give them platforms to speak on because. Now, I'm not saying you should deplatform the platforms they already had, but just do not give them more platforms. Do not give them more ground than what you're trying to. Because the fact of the matter at hand is that white nationalism, or I guess you could just say racial supremacism as a whole, and not conservatism, but fascism overall, these are dangerous ideas that are commonly expressed by the reactionary right, and you should not. And that is not normal for them to be permeating society as they are now. The fact of the matter at hand: do not platform people who express those views.
And according to Time Magazine and USA Today, in the past 20 years, we've had the most hate groups in this year than we have in the past 20 years, which is pretty insane if you think about it. Because usually we see societies get more progressive, but especially at our school, I'm not going to use anecdotes for factual evidence, but I'm just saying from because this is a lot harder to get statistics, because no one wants to say, hey, I'm a racist. Not many people say that except, some people.
Well, no, I mean, people hide it with euphemisms. For instance,
oh my gosh, you want to talk about that? That's amazing.
Oh my god. No, we're not. We'll save that for another podcast. But yeah, I mean, people generally hide their racism with euphemisms. For instance, oh, I'm not a white nationalist. I'm an identitarian. Or I'm not a racist. I just want to preserve Western values. Or I don't hate Mexicans. I just want to secure job security. I just want job security. And I mean, I could go into more detail, but we're not going to do that right now.
What's most hilarious is when I like when fascists try to hide the racism, but when fascism is an inherently racist idea. So, like I like it when there's a certain person that might join us sometime on the podcast.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
who is a fascist, and the thing about him is he knows he's a racist.
Well, the fact of the matter at hand is that, I mean, with current media aside, I mean, so much of the media is, well, then again, politics is very much downstream from culture, I guess, even though a Republican said that. He was right, and the thing is that because of that, when you have white supremacy that generally invades your culture, you get to see the media starts to express it more. I mean, it's this Overton window, and
Fox News.
Oh my gosh, it's not just Fox News. You have,
sure.
I mean, all of the media platform people like that. They'll platform a white supremacist and say, see, look, he's just a normal, everyday guy. But what you fail to understand is that things like that are not normal. It's reactionary to the reforms and revolutions that are going on right now that the left is trying to help out with.
Some of the biggest racists that are not considered racist, which is crazy to me, is Sargon of Akkad, and like
Sargon of Akkad, quote, I wouldn't even rape you, end quote. Quote, I could pass as Aryan, end quote, and all of these things.
John Tron, who is surprising by hand. He did a debate with Destiny, who I disagree with on a multitude of things anyways. But I don't know if you know these two people, but John Tron is a famous YouTube review guy. He's the guy who did the meme for the tape thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
Flex tape. Yes, he did flex tape, and he's a very famous YouTuber, and he did a debate. And don't take my word for it. Go and search these things out, and it's quite evident. If you don't see it, even I don't know, man. It's just he says I can't have any quotes on top of my head, but I remember watching that interview and the debate, and I'm like, holy crap! What? This is what like people with 1 million subscribers on YouTube actually believe and are willing to say.
Truth to power, my friend. Truth to power. And it's not just with YouTubers, it's with many media corporations that platform.
Tucker Carlson.
It's with that platform these things.
Oh, platform. Well,
That,
the thing
that
about
give these things platforms.
the thing about Fox News is people like Tucker Carlson will just bring on people who are idiots and be like, "Ha, they're wrong. I'm smart," and then they always use these. They always try to like the enemy look. They always straw man the opponent, so that way they could boost up their reputation, sound smarter, make their ideas look better, and they never had to debate anybody because they're just basically having a big circle jerk 24/7.
Well, you just described virtually every media panel that happens nowadays.
That's not even. Yeah, that's not on the right. That's on everything.
Well, it's hard. I guess it comes from. Well, we'll discuss this in a later podcast, but arguably, when you think about it, Democrats and Republicans are not all that different.
Yes.
Because during our lifetime, they have gone further and further right. The past 4 U.S. presidencies have all been right-wing authoritarian regimes. The Clintons, Trumps.
Obama. I know everyone's going to say he's a Democrat, but he's not.
Clintons, Kennedys, Trumps, oh my, sort of thing.
Yeah, can we just talk about how Obama's actually a Republican?
Oh my gosh.
A Republican for weed and gay marriage.
Bushes, Trumps, Clintons, oh my. That's a quote by one of my favorite content creators on YouTube. But generally speaking, yes, you can speak truth to power, but power generally already knows the truth, unfortunately.
Let's just look at ourselves and self-reflect. We are kind of circle jerking right now, right?
Kind of.
But like, in the sense,
you disagree with me on pretty much the fact that government is big.
No, we have a lot of fundamental disagreements. It's just this topic specifically today we're not disagreeing on.
Certainly.
But in the future we will disagree. It's not going to be like this where we're just like, oh yeah, we're right. It's going to change in the future. This is just an introduction. This is something we definitely fundamentally agree with, that media in general is bad right now and it's corrupt. Especially when you have people who are, like most of these things are owned by millionaires anyways. You think these guys have their own opinions? No, it's the investors, it's the stockholders who really have these opinions.
Money is power.
The Jews.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
I'm just kidding.
Stop it right now.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm like 25% Jewish, so it's like.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my God. That's a whole other can of worms. Well, generally speaking, that's how things are.
This was
generally, I would recommend Parrhesia to power, speaking truth to power, but rather than speaking truth to power, it's speaking candidly about these issues.